This is Earth. Earth is where we live. And it's totally bonkers. And it's hard to imagine all these serious historical events taking place on the same planet where we open Twitter to have vapid, meaningless arguments with people we'll never meet and share memes with no context whatsoever that shouldn't be funny. However, the world didn't turn daft overnight. In fact, in some cases, it's always been that way. And so for this new channel we're trying to get up and running, I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to start off with 25 absurd random history facts, ranging from the odd to the outright hilarious. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, and remember it goes a long way in helping us achieve world domination. And without further ado, let's begin. Napoleon Bonaparte's most humiliating moment would arguably take place in July of 1807, where the famous conqueror was attacked by a horde of rabbits during a rabbit hunt he had arranged for him and his men. Once released from their cages, the rabbits simply charged at Napoleon and his men, and thus the hunter became the hunted, and what I wouldn't give to witness that. Since Napoleon lived until 1821, I think it's fair to say that the rabbits didn't succeed in killing Napoleon. However, the humiliation it likely caused him was good enough. In France during the year 1386, a pig was arrested, imprisoned, tried in a court, and executed for murdering a child. Though not unique for an animal to be put on trial in the Middle Ages, it is still a silly thought. On the 27th of August 1896, the Anglo-Zanzibar War broke out between Britain and Zanzibar. It ended 38 minutes later, with one British sailor wounded, and on Zanzibar's part, roughly 500 were either wounded or killed, including military and civilian alike. This is considered to be the shortest war in history, and it didn't last as long as half a football match. At US President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845, his pet African grey parrot had to be removed because it was swearing loudly and often disturbing other attendees. And here we mourn the loss of the President of the United States. Following the death of Israel's first president in November of 1952, the presidency was offered to Albert Einstein, who declined, citing he didn't have the natural aptitude to properly deal with people. Albert Einstein wasn't even from Israel, but declined the presidency on the basis of being an introvert. Rome's infamous tyrant Caligula once threatened to make one of his favourite horses a senator, citing it'd do a better job than human senators. He was assassinated before he could do this, and rumour has it he had every intent in doing so. Unfortunately, in the end, he didn't really get the chance to. In the year 1820, the town of Salem, Massachusetts, notorious for its witch trials, held a trial to determine whether or not tomatoes were poisonous. The trial was settled when Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson ate a whole basket of tomatoes without dying or falling ill. Clearly, they were a superstitious bunch. Though a trial against tomatoes in the 19th century is definitely far better than what they were doing at the end of the 17th century. The fear of the tomato, which sounds ridiculous to say, wasn't however confined to Salem. I just think it's ironic that it was a town notorious for its witch trials that put this superstition to bed. King Henry VIII had grooms of the stool, and their job was to wipe his backside after a bowel movement. All 4 individuals who served in this position under Henry's reign were knighted. So he literally knighted 4 blokes for wiping his backside, and I also think it's funny that by mathematics they stuck around longer than his wives did. In the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX declared cats to be associated with devil worship, and had as many exterminated as possible. Many believe this led to the increased transmission for the bubonic plague due to the increase in rat infestations. However, of late it's been acknowledged that the plague spread simply far too quickly for rats to be the only culprit. Dick move from Gregory banning cats though, because cats are cool. In ancient Asia and up until the 19th century, a popular method of execution was death by elephant. Elephants could be taught to inflict painful and horrific slow deaths, or simply execute people using large blades fitted to their tusks. I'm sure it made sense culturally, it just seems a bit random to me. The Volkswagen Beetle was commissioned by none other than Adolf Hitler, intended to be a practical and affordable car that the working class could afford. The year 46 BCE was 445 days long by imperial decree due to Julius Caesar implementing 2 extra leap months to bring the calendar in step with the seasons. The basis of the calendar afterwards was the 365-day and 6-hour format that we know today. Cuban dictator Fidel Castro was targeted in over 600 plots to kill him, and the methods of some of these attempted assassinations were equally as Hitman level absurd as the number of attempts on his life. From a poisoned diving suit to an exploding cigar, Castro of course survived and lived until 2016, where he passed away aged 90 years. During Prohibition, the US government began to poison alcohol. When the law banning booze was passed, many continued to drink alcohol, and thus the law officials were frustrated and naturally responded by poisoning industrial alcohols otherwise regularly stolen by bootleggers and converted into drinking alcohol, and those who would consume the poisoned beverages would die. This roughly resulted in the deaths of at least 10,000 people by the end of Prohibition in 1933. It's a bit extreme, to be honest. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old naval engineer on a business trip to Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945, surviving the atomic bomb's blast despite being only 2 miles away from ground zero. On the 7th, he boarded a train home to Nagasaki, where 2 days later, the other atomic bomb fell on the city. He survived again. Rumour has it he was discussing what he'd seen in Hiroshima with his colleagues when the second bomb fell, interrupting the conversation. Regardless, it's hard to tell if he was a lucky man or an unlucky one, though he lived a long life and only passed away aged 93 in 2010. Carbon dated to between 1404 and 1438, the Voynich manuscript still baffles scientists and historians alike. Written in an unidentified language, it's unclear if this was intended as a code or plain gibberish deliberately to fuck with historians. If that is the case, the effort is through the roof, being 240 pages long, with peculiar foldouts and some pages suspected to be missing on top. Many illustrations of plants and animals in the book also cannot really be identified, and I'm sure you'll find no shortage of theories about its purpose. If you want a mad tilt perspective, less time has passed between Cleopatra's reign of ancient Egypt and the invention of the smartphone than between her reign and the pyramids themselves being built. American President Lyndon B. Johnson would continue his interview whilst on the toilet. He'd have reporters and aides follow him into the bathroom in order to continue his meeting or interview whilst exposing his presidential genitals to take care of some plumbing. I'm sure that was an awkward experience for everybody but him. In 1985, oceanography professor Robert Ballard embarked on a mission to search for the RMS Titanic, which sank in 1912. That was the public story, however it was actually a front for searching for nuclear submarines lost in the 1960s, as part of a secret mission. However, due to finding said submarines earlier than expected, Ballard's team did actually search for and find the wreckage of the RMS Titanic on the 1st of September. When forks were introduced to Italy in the 11th century, religious leaders referred to them as blasphemous, as eating with artificial hands offended the Lord. And if that's all it takes to offend God, I wonder what he thinks of Twitter. There's no evidence to suggest the church as a whole banned the usage of forks, however individual Roman Catholic leaders on occasion expressed a dislike for it, and what a ridiculous thing to get het up about. I have another fun Hitler fact for you. According to medical records, Adolf Hitler took up to roughly 30 different drugs regularly at one point or another to contain his incessant and uncontrollable farting problem. I'd insert a gas joke here, but it'd be inappropriate. Between the years 1898 and 1910, heroin was distributed as a cough medicine. Side effects include scratching for more, I suppose. During the 1930s, Australia technically went to war with emus. On one occasion, the Australian army found 1,000 emus grouped together and attempted to kill them. The emus won the war in the end. The unsuccessful attempt to curb the population of emus in Australia has been remembered as the Great Emu War. In 1866, Liechtenstein sent out an army of 80 soldiers to participate in the Austro-Prussian War. None of the soldiers were killed and 81 came back as they'd made a friend. The country's army was disbanded 2 years later and has remained neutral ever since. And I think that's for the best because they're clearly too powerful. In Strasbourg in the Holy Roman Empire in the year 1518, many locals began to dance uncontrollably for days on end until they died. This dancing mania lasted 2 months and isn't the only recorded instance of this occurring. Thanks for watching this video, I really hope that you've enjoyed. Please let us know your favourite absurd history fact that could be funny, ridiculous, completely perspective altering, or all of the above down in the comments section. Also, if you feel it's appropriate, please let me know how I can improve this format to be better. This is a brand new channel, it's not going to be perfect off the bat, I'm painfully aware of that, and I want to improve it as much as I can and your input is valued. But for now I must go, the emus need me. Take care everybody, and hopefully I will see you soon.